Ethan Cole lay flat on the cold hardwood floor beneath his own bed, the engagement ring pressed tight in his fist, while his fiancée laughed above him with another man. They thought he was just a small-time craftsman, easy to outmaneuver, easy to take from. They spoke openly about the wedding, about his business, about how simple it would be to gain control after the vows. They had no idea he wasn't the man they believed, and they had no idea he was listening. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 24 hours earlier, everything still looked like a life worth trusting. Ethan woke before sunrise, as he always did. The house was quiet, still wrapped in that soft, fragile calm that only existed before a big day. Tomorrow, he would be married. That thought sat somewhere in his chest, steady but unfamiliar. Not excitement, not fear, something quieter, something measured. He moved through the house with the same precision he brought to everything. Coffee brewed, tools checked, phone glanced at but not answered. There were 3 missed calls from a number he recognized but didn't return. Not today. The workshops behind the house smelled of fresh-cut wood and varnish. Sunlight filtered in through the high windows, touching the edges of a nearly finished dining table. Ethan ran his hand across the surface, feeling for imperfections. There were none. There never were. He had built everything like this, slowly, carefully, piece by piece. The house, the business, the life he thought he was about to share. Lila didn't understand that part of him. She loved the finished result, the clean lines, the reputation, the growing client list. But the process, the patience, that was something she tolerated, not respected. She stepped into the workshop just after 8, already dressed for the day. Her heels clicked against the concrete floor, sharp and out of place. "You're still working?" she asked, crossing her arms. Ethan looked up briefly. "Finishing this piece. It goes out Monday," she sighed. "Ethan, the wedding is tomorrow. You could at least pretend to slow down." "I am," he said calmly. She didn't smile. "You know what I mean?" He did. He just chose not to respond. Lila walked around the table, running her fingers across the wood. "You should start thinking bigger," she said. "More visibility, more partnerships. You've got something here, but you're not maximizing it." Ethan watched her quietly. "We're doing fine. Fine isn't the goal," she replied. "Growth is." There it was. Always the same conversation. Always framed as support. Always pushing. Ryan said the same things. As if on cue, Murph's voice came from the back door a few minutes later. "Man, you're hiding out here again?" He walked in like he owned the place. Relaxed, confident, easy smile. Ethan nodded. "Just finishing up." Ryan glanced around the workshop, then at Lila. "Still playing with wood instead of scaling up, huh?" It was a joke. It always was. But there was something underneath it. Something sharper. Lila laughed. "I've been telling him the same thing." Ethan didn't react. He picked up a cloth and wiped down the edge of the table. Ryan leaned against the workbench. "You've got connections now. You introduced me to half the people I needed. You could be doing way more with that." "I'm doing enough," Ethan said. Ryan shrugged. "If you say so." But his tone said something else. Something dismissive, like Ethan was choosing to stay small. Ethan let it pass. He always did. By the afternoon, the house filled with movement, deliveries, calls, last-minute details. Lila moved through it all with practiced ease, directing vendors, checking lists, making decisions. She was good at that. Organized, efficient. But there was something else now. A distance. A shift Ethan couldn't quite name. She checked her phone more often, stepped outside for calls she didn't explain, came back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan noticed. He didn't ask. That night, they agreed to follow tradition. Separate rooms. One last night before the wedding, Ethan took the guest room. The house quieted again after midnight. Lights off. Doors closed, silence settling in. He reached into his jacket for the ring box, empty. For a second, his mind didn't catch up. Then it did. He searched the nightstand, the dresser, the floor. Nothing. His chest tightened. Not panic, not yet. Just focus. He dropped to his knees and leaned down, scanning beneath the bed. There it was. A small glint of gold near the baseboard. Exhaled slowly and reached under. Too far. He lowered himself further, sliding onto the floor, shoulders pressing against the frame, arms stretching forward until his fingers brushed the ring. He pulled it back and closed his hand around it. Relief came fast, and then the front door opened. Ethan froze. Footsteps, light, familiar. Lila's voice, soft, relaxed, different. "You made it," she said. Another voice answered. "Ryan." Ethan's body went completely still. He didn't move, couldn't move. The bed frame would creak, the floor would shift, so he stayed there, beneath the bed, breathing slow, listening. Their footsteps passed the guest room, then into the master bedroom. The door closed, a pause, then laughter, low, intimate, easy. Ethan shut his eyes. The sounds that followed didn't leave room for doubt. They were close, comfortable, practiced, not new, not a mistake. Time stretched, seconds felt longer than they should. And then the voices came back. Clearer now. "Tomorrow's perfect," Lila said. "Once we're married, everything shifts." Ryan chuckled. "He still has no idea." "None," she replied. "He trusts me, completely." Ethan's grip tightened around the ring. "He added me to everything," Lila continued. "Accounts, insurance vendor access. It's already halfway done." "And after?" Ryan asked. "After it's just paperwork," she said lightly. "Timing, positioning. He's building something valuable. He just doesn't know how to protect it." Ryan laughed softly. "That's why you're here. That's why we're here," she corrected. Silence. Then movement on the bed above him. Ethan stared into the darkness under the frame, his mind no longer racing. It was quiet now, sharp, precise. They thought he was simple. They thought he was small. They thought he didn't understand the world they were trying to play in, and for the first time that night, Ethan almost smiled, because they had no idea what they had just walked into, and they had no idea he was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Ethan stayed under the bed long after the voices faded into silence. He counted his breathing, slow, controlled. 1 inhale, 1 exhale, over and over until the tight pressure in his chest stopped trying to break through. The house shifted back into stillness. The kind that used to feel like safety. Now it felt like something else entirely. When he finally moved, it was careful, measured. He slid out from under the bed without letting the frame creak, then stood slowly, brushing dust from his shirt as if it mattered. His hand was still closed around the ring. For a moment, he looked at it. The gold band pressed warm against his palm, something that had meant promise, something that now felt like evidence. Ethan set it gently on the nightstand. He didn't go to the master bedroom. He didn't confront them. He didn't even pick up his phone. He just sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the silence. Because silence, he knew, revealed more than anger ever could. By the time morning came, Ethan had already made his first decision. He would not react. He would not give them the version of him they expected. The sunlight came in thin through the blinds, cutting across the floor in pale lines. Ethan was already dressed when Lila knocked lightly on the guest room door. "Hey," she said, opening it halfway, "you're up early." He turned toward her, calm. "Couldn't sleep much." She stepped inside, studying his face for a moment. There was no suspicion in her eyes, no guilt either, just the same composed expression she always carried. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine." She nodded slowly, as if that was enough. "Big day tomorrow." "Well, technically today now." Ethan gave a small smile. "Yeah." She walked closer, reaching up to adjust his collar like she had done a dozen times before. "Everything's set. Vendors, schedule, timing. I went through everything last night." He held her gaze. "I know you did," she smiled, satisfied. "Good." There was a pause. Then she added, almost casually, "After today, things are going to change for us, in a good way." Ethan didn't answer right away. "What kind of change?" She shrugged lightly. "Just growth. You've built something solid. It's time to expand it properly. I can help more once everything's official." There it was, not hidden, not even subtle. Ethan nodded once. "We'll talk about it." Lila seemed pleased with that answer. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, then stepped back. "I've got a call with the planner. I'll see you at the venue later." He watched her leave. The door closed softly behind her, and just like that, the version of her he had known was gone. In its place was someone he now understood completely. Ethan moved through the house quietly. He made coffee, cleaned the counter, straightened a chair that didn't need straightening. Routine. Control. He stepped outside for a moment, letting the cool air settle his thoughts. Across the street, everything looked normal. Neighbors leaving for work. Cars passing. Life moving forward without interruption. Inside his pocket, his phone buzzed. Ethan pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A name appeared. Sterling Holdings. He didn't answer. Not yet. The call stopped after a few seconds. Then a message followed immediately. We need your confirmation before close of business today. Board won't move without you. Ethan stared at the words for a moment. Then he locked his phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Not today. Inside, he grabbed his keys and headed toward the workshop. The familiar smell hit him as soon as he opened the door. Wood, oil, varnish. Everything in its place. Everything predictable. Thomas was already there, going over a stack of invoices. He looked up. You're here early. Couldn't sleep, Ethan said. Thomas studied him for a second longer than usual. You good? I'm good. Thomas nodded, accepting it. We've got confirmation on the hotel shipment. They want final delivery Monday. Also, there's been some interest from a larger group. They asked about long-term contracts. Ethan set his bag down. Which group? Didn't say directly. The email came through a contact tied to Sterling. Ethan paused, just for a second. Then he picked up a cloth and started wiping down the workbench. We'll review it after the weekend. Thomas raised an eyebrow. After the wedding? After the weekend, Ethan repeated. Thomas didn't push further. All right. The rest of the morning passed in steady rhythm. Sanding, measuring, adjusting small details that most people would never notice. Ethan worked the way he always had. Precise, deliberate. But now every movement carried something underneath it. A calculation, a quiet shift. Around midday, Ryan showed up. He walked in with the same easy confidence, like nothing had changed. Man, you disappear right before your own wedding? He said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. Ethan didn't flinch, just finishing things up. Ryan glanced around, still at it. You really don't know how to stop, do you? Ethan met his eyes. I stop when it's done right. Ryan smirked. That's one way to look at it. There was a beat. Then Ryan leaned in slightly. Listen, after all this, we should sit down. Talk about next steps. There's a lot of opportunity coming your way. You're going to need help managing it. Ethan held his gaze. I'll keep that in mind. Ryan smiled, satisfied. Good. That's what I like to hear. He didn't stay long. He didn't need to. Everything he thought he knew was already enough for him. By late afternoon, the workshop was quiet again. Ethan stood alone, hands resting on the edge of the table he had been working on. He looked down at the smooth surface. Flawless. Built to last. Something inside him settled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone again. This time he opened the message. Then he typed a short reply. Not approval, not yet. Just one line. Delay the board. I'll handle it personally. He hit send. A second later, another message came through. Understood. We'll wait for your direction. Ethan stared at the screen, then slowly locked it. Across town in a quiet office building, a group of executives had just postponed a multi-million-dollar decision, and no one in his house knew. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket, picked up his tools, and went back to work. Because for now, silence was still his strongest move, but not for much longer. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling while the house settled around him. Every sound carried differently now. Pipes shifting, floorboard creaking, the faint hum of electricity through the walls. He cataloged everything, not because he was afraid, because he needed control. By morning, his mind was clear. The venue sat on the edge of the city, an old estate restored into something polished and expensive. Tall windows, white stone, landscaped gardens that looked effortless but cost more than most people realized. Ethan stepped out of his car just after 9. The air was cool, the sky clean, perfect weather for a wedding. Lila was already there. She stood near the entrance with the coordinator, clipboard in hand, moving through details with practiced efficiency. She didn't see him at first. He watched her, the way she smiled, the way she nodded, the way she controlled the room without raising her voice. Nothing about her looked like someone who had spent the night planning how now and dismantled the man she was about to marry. When she finally noticed him, her expression softened instantly. There you are, she said, walking toward him. I've been trying to get everything locked in before the guests start arriving. Ethan nodded. Looks like you've got it handled. Of course I do, she said with a quick smile. I told you today is going to run perfectly. She stepped closer, smoothing his jacket with both hands. You look good. So do you. For a second it almost felt normal, then it didn't. Ryan arrived a few minutes later, already in his suit, adjusting his cufflinks as he approached. There's the groom, he said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. You ready for this? Ethan met his eyes. I am. Ryan grinned. Good. Because it's about time you locked this down. There was something in the way he said it. Not congratulations. Ownership. Ethan let it pass. They moved through the morning like a script already written. Final walkthrough. Seating confirmations. Vendor timing. At one point, Ethan stepped aside near the back of the garden, pulling out his phone. Another message had come through. Sterling Holdings. The board is waiting. We cannot delay past noon, he read it once. Then again. The weight of it sat differently now. Inside, Lila laughed with the planner. Outside, executives were waiting on his word. Two separate worlds. Only one of them knew they were connected. Ethan typed slowly. Proceed without me for now. I'll confirm final terms tonight. He sent it. The response came almost instantly. Understood. We'll hold the vote open. Ethan locked the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Behind him, Ryan's voice cut through the quiet. Important business? Ethan turned slightly, just checking in on something. Ryan walked closer, hands in his pockets. You're still juggling work today? Man, you really don't know how to let go. It's handled, Ethan said. Ryan smirked. Hope so. Because after today, you won't have the luxury of doing everything your way anymore. Ethan held his gaze. What makes you say that? Ryan shrugged. Marriage changed things. Shared decisions. Shared access. Shared responsibility. He paused, then added casually, Lila's going to bring structure to what you've built. You need that. There it was again. The assumption that Ethan needed to be managed. Improved. Reshaped. Ethan gave a small nod. We'll see. Ryan smiled like he had already won something. You will, he said, then turned and walked back toward the main entrance. Ethan watched him go. For a brief moment, something sharp moved through him. Not anger. Clarity. By midday, the venue began to fill. Guests arrived in waves. Conversations layered over each other, laughter, greetings. Small talk that all sounded the same. Ethan stood near the front, shaking hands, thanking people for coming. Everyone saw the same thing. A quiet man, a successful but grounded business owner, a groom about to step into a bigger life. No one saw anything else. That was the point. Lila passed by him once, her hand brushing his arm. We're almost ready, she said softly. He nodded. I know. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. After today, we should sit down with everything. Accounts, contracts. I want to make sure we're aligned from the start. Ethan looked at her. Really looked at her. You've already been aligning things, he said. She smiled, unbothered. Of course, that's what partners do. He didn't respond, because she wasn't wrong, just not in the way she thought. The ceremony began on time. Music drifted across the garden. Guests took their seats. The officiant stood waiting at the front. Ethan took his place. He stood there, hands loosely at his sides, watching the aisle. Ryan moved into position beside him, straightening his tie, adjusting his stance like he belonged there. Lila appeared moments later. White dress, controlled smile, perfect timing. She walked toward him like everything was exactly as it should be. Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle, not the emotion everyone expected. Something colder, something final. The officiant began speaking. Words about commitment, trust, partnership. Each one landed differently now. Ethan listened and waited. The moment came. Do you take? I don't, Ethan said. The words cut clean through the air. Everything stopped. The music, the movement, the quiet hum of expectation. Lila blinked. What? Ethan stepped back. I'm not doing this, he said calmly. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Confusion, shock. Questions whispered too loudly. Ryan leaned in sharply. Ethan, what are you doing? Ethan didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on Lila. I found something last night, he said. Her expression shifted, just slightly. What are you talking about? She asked. Ethan reached into his pocket. For a second, it looked like he was going to pull out the ring. Instead, he let his hand rest there. Then he shook his head. Not here, he said. He turned to the guests. I'm sorry for wasting your time. You deserve better than this. The silence that followed was heavier than anything said out loud. Ethan stepped away from the altar. Ryan grabbed his arm. You don't just walk out like this. Ethan looked down at his hand on his sleeve. then back at his face. "I just did," he said. He pulled free and walked past him. Behind him, the ceremony unraveled, voices rising, chairs shifting, the careful illusion breaking apart. But Ethan didn't stop. He walked all the way to his car without looking back. Only when he closed the door did he allow himself a breath. One, then another. His phone buzz looked at the screen. Lila. He didn't answer. Then a second call came in. Ryan. He ignored that too. Then a third notification appeared. An email. From Daniel Reeves. Subject line, immediate, review required, before asset exposure risks. Ethan stared at it for a long moment, then he opened it. Just slightly, but enough. Ethan didn't start the engine right away. He sat in the car, the email still open on his phone, reading the subject line again as if it might change. Immediate, review required before asset exposure risk. Daniel Reeves never used words like that without a reason. Ethan opened the message fully. The content was brief, direct, structured the way Daniel always wrote. Lila Monroe has attempted to initiate access verification on multiple linked business accounts this morning. Timing coincides with scheduled marriage event. Risk level elevated due to potential asset classification exposure if legal status changes. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. So it had already started. Not after the wedding. Not later. Now. There was a second paragraph. We've contained initial access requests. However, if additional credentials are granted or if joint status is formalized, containment becomes significantly more complex. Recommend immediate action. Ethan exhaled slowly. He leaned back in the seat and closed his eyes for a moment. Everything Lila had said under the cover of darkness wasn't just a plan. It was already in motion. He opened his eyes again and typed a short reply. Lock all non-essential access. No changes without my authorization. I'll handle the rest. He hit send. The response came almost instantly, already in progress. Ethan set the phone down on the passenger seat. For the first time since leaving the altar, something heavier settled in his chest. Not shock, not anger, confirmation. He started the engine. The drive back to the house was quiet. Traffic moved normally. The world didn't pause for what had just happened. But when he pulled into the driveway, the stillness felt different. Lila's car was already there. So was Ryan's. Ethan turned off the engine and stepped out. He didn't rush. Inside, voices carried from the living room. Sharp. Tense. You embarrassed me in front of everyone, Lila was saying, her voice tight but controlled. Ethan walked in. Both of them turned toward him. Lila stood near the center of the room, still in her wedding dress, but the softness was gone. The warmth, too. What remained was something colder. Ryan leaned against the arm of the couch, arms crossed, watching Ethan with a look that had finally lost its ease. You want to explain what that was? Ryan asked. Ethan closed the door behind him. I said what I needed to say. That's not an explanation, Lila snapped. Ethan met her eyes. No, it's a decision. Her expression hardened. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He stepped further into the room, setting his keys down on the table like it was any other day. You tell me, he said finally. The shift was small, but it landed. Lila's eyes flickered just for a second. Then she recovered. If you're going to accuse me of something, you should at least have the decency to say it. Ryan straightened. Yeah, you don't just walk out like that and expect everything to be fine. Ethan looked at him. I don't expect anything to be fine, he said. Silence stretched. Lila crossed her arms. Then what do you expect? Ethan held her gaze. Truth, he said. Her jaw tightened. I've been nothing but honest with you. That almost made him smile, almost. Instead, he nodded slowly. That's interesting. Ryan pushed off the couch. All right, enough of this. If you've got something to say, say it. Otherwise, you need to fix what you just broke. Ethan turned to him fully. I didn't break anything, he said. I stopped it. Ryan let out a short laugh. Stopped what? Your own wedding? Ethan didn't react. He stepped past him and walked into the kitchen. Behind him, Lila followed. This isn't a game, Ethan, she said. You don't get to just walk away and pretend it doesn't affect anything. He opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and set it on the counter without opening it. It affects everything, he said calmly. Then act like it, she shot back. Ethan turned to face her again. I am. The way he said it made her pause, because there was no hesitation in it, no confusion, just certainty. Ryan stepped into the doorway behind her. You're acting like you've got leverage here, he said. You don't. Ethan's eyes moved to him. Don't I? Ryan shook his head. You've got a small business, a handful of contracts, and a reputation that just took a hit in front of everyone who matters. You think walking out makes you stronger. It doesn't. It makes you unstable. Lila nodded slightly, reinforcing it. We can still fix this, she said, softer now, but only if you stop doing whatever this is. Ethan studied her. The tone had changed, not apology, strategy. You're concerned about fixing things, he asked. Of course I am, she said quickly. We've built something together. Ethan let that sit. Then he walked past her toward the hallway. Ethan, she called after him. Where are you going? He didn't stop. To get something I should have gotten last night. His voice stayed level. Behind him, Ryan frowned. What does that mean? Ethan disappeared into the guest room. The door closed. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lila turned to Ryan, her voice low. Did he hear something? She asked. Ryan shook his head. He would have said it. Not necessarily. Ryan's jaw tightened. You're overthinking it, am I? She said. Inside the guest room, Ethan opened the drawer beside the bed. The ring was still there, right where he left it. He picked it up, turning it slowly between his fingers. Then he set it back down. Next to it, he pulled out his phone, opened the email again, then scrolled. Attached at the bottom was a file. Access log summary, Monroe inquiry activity. Ethan tapped it. Rows of timestamps filled the screen. Attempts, requests, denied entries. Each one lined up perfectly with the timeline of the morning. Lila hadn't waited. She had moved early, faster than he expected, which meant something else. She had been preparing longer than he thought. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his focus sharpened. He stepped out of the room, phone in hand. Lila and Ryan both turned toward him. He didn't speak. He just held the phone out slightly. Not enough for them to see clearly, just enough for them to notice. Lila's eyes narrowed. What is that? She asked. Ethan met her gaze. Something we need to talk about, he said. Ryan took a step forward. Then talk. Ethan lowered the phone. Not here, he said. Another pause. Lila's voice tightened. Then where? Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket. Somewhere with witnesses, he said. Ryan's expression shifted. Lila's too. Because for the first time, they realized they might not be in control of what came next. The room went quiet after Ethan's words. Not the kind of silence that came from peace. This was heavier, sharper, the kind that forced people to look at each other differently. Lila was the first to recover. Witnesses? She repeated, her voice tight. Ethan, this isn't a courtroom. He didn't respond to the tone. That's exactly why we shouldn't pretend it's private anymore, he said. Ryan stepped forward again, slower this time. More careful. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Ethan turned slightly, enough to face him without fully shifting his stance. It already is. Ryan's jaw flexed. You still haven't said what you think you found. I didn't say I think, Ethan replied. That landed. Lila's eyes flicked between them. Then say it, she pushed. Stop talking in circles. Ethan held her gaze. For a moment, he almost did. Almost laid everything out right there. The timestamps, the access attempts, the plan he had heard word for word. But something held him back. Not hesitation, strategy. It's because once it was said, it couldn't be controlled anymore, and control was the only thing he had left. Tomorrow, Ethan said instead. Both of them blinked. What? Ryan asked. We meet tomorrow, Ethan continued. Not here, not like this. Lila let out a sharp breath. You don't get to set terms after what you just did. Ethan's expression didn't change. I just did. The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're not in a position to play this game. You're assuming I am. Another pause. This one longer, more uncertain. Lila broke it. Fine, she said. Where? Ethan reached for his phone again, unlocking it with a quick motion. Daniel Reeves's office. Ryan's brows pulled together. Your lawyer? Ethan nodded once. Lila's posture shifted. Not panic, but something close. Why would we go there? She asked. Ethan slipped the phone back into his pocket, because that's where things get clarified. Lila held his eyes, searching for something she hadn't seen before. What exactly are you trying to prove? She asked. Ethan didn't answer directly. Instead, he stepped past them and moved toward the front door. Be there at 10, he said, and then he left. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. Inside, neither of them moved right away. Ryan exhaled slowly. He's bluffing. Lila didn't respond. He doesn't have anything, Ryan continued. If he did, he would have said it already. Still nothing. Ryan turned toward her. Lila. She shook her head slightly. No, something's off. He's trying to intimidate you, Ryan said. That's all. Lila crossed her arms, thinking, he's not that type. Ryan scoffed. People change when they're cornered. Lila didn't look convinced, because Ethan hadn't looked cornered. He had looked certain. Ethan drove without a destination for a while, not to escape. To think. The city moved around him like it always did. Traffic lights, pedestrians, noise, nothing out of place. But inside the car, everything had shifted. He replayed the morning. Every word, every look. They still didn't know. And that gave him something. Time. He turned into a quiet street and pulled over, cutting the engine. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. Daniel answered on the second ring. I saw your message, he said without greeting. I need everything ready, Ethan replied. You're accelerating, Daniel noted. They started already. A pause. Then, I assumed as much. Ethan leaned back in the seat. What's our position? Strong, Daniel said. Stronger than they realize. She has no formal claim yet. Her attempts were premature. And if I had gone through with the wedding, then we'd be having a very different conversation, Daniel replied. Ethan nodded slightly. That's what I thought. Daniel continued. I've already secured documentation of her access attempts. Time-stamped. Verified. It establishes intent. Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the phone. Good. But, Daniel added, you need to decide how far you want to take this. Ethan stared out through the windshield. How far can it go? That depends on you, Daniel said. We can contain this quietly. Cut her off. Protect everything. Or we make it visible. Formal. Documented. That opens other doors, not all of them clean. Ethan understood what that meant. Reputation, exposure, consequences that didn't stop at them. He exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, we talk through it with them there. Daniel didn't hesitate. I'll have everything prepared. Ethan ended the call and set the phone down. For a moment, he just sat there. Then he reached over, opened the glove compartment, and pulled out a thin folder. Inside were documents most people never saw. Agreements. Structures. Signatures that didn't carry his name in the obvious places. He flipped through them slowly. Everything he had built. Everything they thought they could take. Ethan closed the folder and set it back. Tomorrow they were going to learn exactly how wrong they had been. That night, the house felt different. Lila stayed in the master bedroom. Ryan left just before midnight. No arguments, no confrontation, just distance. Ethan stayed in the guest room again, not because of tradition, because lines had already been drawn. His phone buzzed once more before he went to sleep. A message from an unknown number. He opened it. We've been informed of a potential conflict involving one of your associated parties. Board members are requesting clarification before proceeding with the vote. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. They were already asking questions, faster than expected, which meant something had reached further than just Lila, or someone had started digging. He typed a short reply. Hold position, no statements until I approve. He sent it, then set the phone down beside him. The room went quiet, but this time it wasn't empty, it was waiting, and for the first time since everything began, Ethan realized this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about control, and someone else had just stepped onto the board. The next morning arrived without ceremony, no raised voices, no confrontation in the hallway, just the quiet weight of something unfinished pressing against every movement. Ethan was already up when Lila stepped into the kitchen. She had changed out of the wedding dress. Now she wore something sharper, composed, deliberate. The version of herself she used when she needed control. Ryan was already there too. Coffee sat untouched in front of him, his posture tighter than usual. He wasn't relaxed anymore, not like before. They both looked at Ethan when he walked in. No greetings, no pretending, just waiting. Ethan moved past them and poured himself coffee like it was any other morning. We're still doing this? Ryan asked. Ethan took a slow sip before answering. You can leave if you want. Ryan's jaw flexed. I'm not going anywhere. Ethan nodded once. Then be on time. Lila spoke next. You're being dramatic. Ethan sent the cup down. You'll see. She studied him carefully, trying to read something that wasn't there anymore. Ethan, she said, softer now. If this is about the wedding, we can still fix it. People will understand. We can reschedule, move forward. Ethan looked at her. For a second, there was something there. Not hope, memory. Then it was gone. This isn't about the wedding, he said. Her expression tightened. Then what is it about? Ethan didn't answer, because the answer was already waiting for them somewhere else. Daniel Reeves's office sat on the 12th floor of a downtown building that didn't advertise what it really handled. No flashy signage, no unnecessary attention, just quiet authority. Ethan arrived first. Daniel was already waiting. He stood as Ethan walked in, extending a hand. You're early. Ethan shook it. I wanted to go over everything before they get here. Daniel gestured toward the conference room. Then let's make sure we're aligned. The room was clean, minimal. A long table, 4 chairs, a folder placed precisely in front of each seat. Ethan noticed that immediately. You're expecting them to stay, he said. Daniel gave a small nod. If they leave, it won't be because they weren't given the chance to understand. Ethan stepped closer to the table. His name wasn't on any of the folders. That was intentional. What's inside? He asked. Documentation, Daniel said. Access attempts, timeline alignment, initial analysis of intent. And something else. Ethan looked at him. What? Daniel held his gaze. Context they don't have. Ethan didn't press further. He didn't need to. Because whatever Daniel had prepared, it was designed to shift the balance. And today, that mattered. They arrived together. Lila first, walking in with controlled confidence. Ryan just behind her, his expression sharper, more guarded than before. Both of them paused slightly when they entered the conference room. Not because of the space, because of the setup. 4 chairs, 4 folders, no room for improvisation. Sit, Daniel said calmly. Neither of them asked who he was. They already knew. Lila took the seat across from Ethan. Ryan sat beside her. Daniel remained standing for a moment longer, then moved to the head of the table. Let's keep this simple, he said. This meeting exists to clarify facts and prevent escalation. Ryan let out a short breath. Escalation? You mean whatever this is? He gestured around the room. Daniel didn't react. I mean legal exposure. That changed the tone. Lila's posture shifted slightly. Legal exposure for what? Daniel looked at Ethan briefly. Ethan gave a small nod. Proceed. Daniel opened his folder. Yesterday morning, he began. There were multiple attempts to access restricted business accounts connected to Mr. Cole. Lila didn't flinch. Those attempts were flagged and logged. The timing coincides with a scheduled marriage event that would have changed legal access structures. Ryan leaned forward. So what? She was helping with admin. Daniel met his eyes, without authorization. That's not a crime, Ryan shot back. Correct, Daniel said on its own. The pause that followed stretched just long enough. Lila spoke carefully. What are you implying? Daniel slid one of the folders across the table. Review the timestamp. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before opening it. The pages were clean, structured, clear. Dates, times, access points, denials. A pattern, not random, intentional. Lyle's expression didn't break, but it changed. Ryan looked up first. This proves nothing. Daniel folded his hands. It proves sequence. Ethan finally spoke. Lila the tie moved back to the page. The entries aligned morning, before the ceremony, before he said no, before anything had changed. She closed the folder slowly. You're reaching, she said. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Am I? Her gaze snapped to his. For the first time, there was something behind it. Not control, not confidence, calculation. Ryan pushed his chair back slightly. This is pointless. You're trying to build a case out of nothing. Daniel didn't look at him. Instead, he reached into his own folder. There's more, he said. He placed a second set of documents on the table. These were different. Not logs, not timestamps, contracts, agreements, structures. Ryan frowned. What is this? Daniel didn't answer him. He looked at Lila. You said you wanted alignment, he said. This is what alignment actually looks like. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, because this was the edge. The point where everything they thought they understood started to fall apart. Ryan reached for the papers first, and as his eyes moved across the page, his expression changed. Completely. Ryan's grip tightened on the paper, not visibly enough for anyone else to notice, but Ethan saw it. because for the first time since this began, Ryan wasn't performing. He was reading. Actually reading. "What is this?" Ryan asked again, slower now. Daniel didn't rush to answer. "Continue," he said. Ryan's eyes moved across the lines. Terms. Structures. Ownership layers that didn't look like anything Ethan had ever shown him. "This isn't your business," Ryan said, almost automatically, like he was correcting something. Ethan leaned back slightly in his chair. "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." That made Ryan look up, directly at him, and for a second something flickered. Not understanding, but doubt. Lila reached for the papers next. Her movements were controlled. Careful, but not as confident as before. She scanned the first page, then the second. Her expression stayed composed, but her eyes slowed, because the more she read, the less it matched the version of Ethan she had built in her mind. "These are holding agreements?" she said. Daniel nodded once. "Partially." "Partially," she repeated. He folded his hands. "You're looking at one layer." Ryan let out a short breath. "This is irrelevant. None of this changes anything." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Doesn't it?" Ryan looked at him sharply. "No, it doesn't." But his voice had lost something. Lila kept reading. "This name," she said, tapping the page lightly. "Sterling Holdings." Ethan didn't move. Daniel answered instead. "You've come across it before?" She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Yes," she said, "in email threads. Vendor connections." "Nothing major." Daniel watched her closely. "It's straightened slightly. It's just a partner group." Ryan jumped in. "Exactly. A partner, not him." Ethan's eyes stayed on them. Neither of them noticed the detail, that the documents didn't list him the way they expected. Not as an employee, not as a contractor, something else. Something harder to define at a glance. I'll flip to the next page. Her fingers slowed. "What is this section?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached forward and turned the page for her. "Read the heading," he said. She did. Her eyes narrowed. "Controlling interest?" The words sat there, quiet, heavy. Ryan leaned in closer now, reading over her shoulder. "That doesn't make sense," he said quickly. "This isn't." Now he saw it too, not just the words. The structure, percentages, decision thresholds, sign-off authority, and none of the names matched what he thought he knew. He looked up again, this time directly at Ethan. "What is this?" he asked again. Ethan didn't answer, because he didn't need to. Not yet. Daniel spoke instead. "These documents outline ownership structures connected to multiple active contracts, including the hotel group you've been working with." Ryan's expression tightened. "I already know that." Daniel nodded. "Do you?" Ryan's jaw flexed. "Yes." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Then you should already understand why your last 3 proposals were put on hold." The room shifted. Ryan froze. "What?" he said. Lila looked at him. "What does that mean?" Ryan didn't answer her. His attention stayed locked on Daniel. "What do you mean on hold?" he asked. Daniel opened another folder, pulled out a printed email, and slid it across the table. Ryan grabbed it. "Read it once." Then again, his expression didn't just change this time, it cracked. "They paused the funding," he said slowly. "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "Why?" Ryan demanded. Daniel didn't answer. He looked at Ethan, and this time, Ethan spoke. "Because someone raised concerns," he said. Ryan's head snapped toward him. "You?" Ethan held his gaze. "I didn't have to raise anything," he said. "I just clarified." Ryan pushed his chair back slightly. "Clarified what?" Ethan leaned forward. "Not aggressive. Not emotional. Just precise." "How you got access," he said. Silence. Lila's breathing shifted. Ryan shook his head. "You're lying." Ethan didn't react. "You think you can just walk into a meeting and shut down deals?" Ryan continued, his voice rising. "That's not how this works." Ethan's expression stayed calm. "It is if the deal runs through something you don't understand." Ryan laughed, but it didn't land, because there was nothing behind it anymore. Lila looked between them. "You're saying he had something to do with this?" she asked. Ryan didn't answer, because for the first time he wasn't sure. Daniel stepped in. "The projects you're referring to," he said, "are connected to a funding structure that requires approval at multiple levels." Ryan swells. "I know that." Daniel nodded. "Then you should know what happens when one of those approvals is delayed." Ryan's grip tightened on the paper. "They don't delay without reason." "No," Daniel agreed. "They don't." Lila turned to Ethan again, her voice lower now. "Careful, what are you not telling us?" she asked. Ethan met her eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing, because this was the line, the moment where everything could tip. He could say it, end it, expose everything all at once. But instead, he leaned back slightly and shook his head. "You're not ready for that yet," he said. Ryan slammed his hand lightly against the table. "Stop talking like that!" Ethan didn't access, he said. "You got closer than you should have." Lila's voice sharpened. "Closer to what?" Ethan held her gaze. "To something you thought you could take." The room went still, not tense, not loud, still, because for the first time, neither of them knew how far they had already stepped in. Daniel closed the folder slowly. "There's one more thing," he said. He pulled out a final document, different from the others, simpler, shorter. He placed it on the table between them. Lila looked down, her eyes moved across the page, then stopped. "What is this?" she asked. Daniel's voice was calm. "A notice," he said. Ryan leaned in, read the first line, and went completely silent. Lila's hand tightened around the paper. Effective immediately, she read under her breath. Her voice dropped. "Revocation of all informal access privileges." The words landed hard. Ryan looked up. "This is a joke," he said. Daniel shook his head. "It's already been filed." Lila's eyes snapped to Ethan. "You did this?" Ethan didn't look away. "I protected what's mine," he said. And for the first time, they realized they were no longer gaining access. They were being cut out. Completely. Ryan pushed the document away like it burned. "This doesn't mean anything," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "You're trying to scare us with paperwork." Ethan didn't move. Across the table, Lila was still holding her copy, not pushing it away, not dismissing it, reading it again, carefully, because she had always been the one who paid attention to details. And this didn't look like something thrown together. "This is already filed," she asked quietly, her eyes still on the page. Daniel nodded. "As of this morning," she swallowed slightly. "So I don't have access anymore." "You never had formal access," Daniel corrected. "Now you don't have informal proximity either." Ryan leaned forward again, forcing his couture back into something stronger. "This is temporary. You can't just cut people out like that without consequences." Daniel looked at him. "You're correct." Ryan seized on it. "Exactly. So whatever this is, there will be consequences," Daniel continued calmly. Ryan stopped. "Just not the ones you're expecting." Silence dropped hard over the table. Ethan watched both of them. This was different now. Before, they had been confident. Now they were calculating, trying to understand a structure they had already stepped into. Lila finally closed the document. Slowly. Then she looked at Ethan. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. Her voice wasn't soft. It wasn't emotional. It was controlled, and underneath it something sharper. Ethan held her gaze. That landed. Her jaw tightened. "That's not the same thing," she said. "No?" Ethan asked. Ryan cut in. "It's not. She didn't sabotage anything. You're the one shutting things down." Ethan turned his head slightly. "You're sure about that?" Ryan hesitated, just long enough. Daniel stepped in again. "Let's stay focused," he said. "This meeting isn't about assigning blame. It's about clarifying position." Lila exhaled slowly. "Then clarify it." Daniel nodded once. "Your access has been revoked. Your attempts to establish position within Mr. Cole's business structure have been documented. That creates risk." "For who?" Ryan asked. Daniel looked at him directly. "For you." "Ryan's ridiculous." Daniel didn't respond. He simply slid another sheet across the table. Ryan looked at it, then frowned, then read it again. "This isn't," he started but stopped because now he understood something he hadn't before. "This connects to my projects?" he asked. Daniel nodded. Indirectly, Ryan's breathing shifted. "How?" Ethan answered this time. "Because you didn't build them alone," he said. Ryan looked up sharply. "I know how my deals work." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "No," he said. "You know what you were told." The difference hit. Hard. Lila turned to Ryan. "What is he talking about?" Ryan didn't answer her, because now he was thinking, backtracking, replaying conversations, meetings, introductions, and slowly the pattern started to show. He looked back at Ethan. "You introduced me," he said. Ethan nodded once. Ryan's expression darkened. "You vouched it for me, yes, and now those same connections are pulling back." Ethan didn't blink. "They're reassessing." Ryan let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "You did this." Ethan didn't correct him. He didn't confirm it either. He just held his gaze, and that was enough, because Ryan realized something worse than being told the truth. He had walked into it himself. Lila's voice cut through the silence. "You're saying he can control that?" No one answered her immediately. Not Ryan, not Daniel. Because the answer wasn't simple, and that made it more dangerous. Ethan finally spoke. "I'm saying you don't understand what you tried to get into." Lila stared at him. For the first time since all of this began, there was no control left in her expression. Only uncertainty. "You're not just running a workshop," she said. Ethan didn't respond. Ryan leaned back slowly in his chair. Everything about him had changed now. The confidence, the ease, gone. "What are you?" he asked. Ethan's eyes didn't move, but he didn't answer. Because this was still his line, and he wasn't crossing it yet. Daniel closed the remaining folder. "There's one final matter," he said. Both of them looked at him. He placed a single document in the center of the table, different from the others, cleaner, simpler. Lila reached for it first. Her fingers hesitated just slightly before lifting the page. Ryan leaned in again. They both read it, and this time neither of them spoke right away. The words were clear: mutual release, non-interference agreement, immediate separation of all personal and professional contact. Lila looked up first. "You want us to sign this?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "It protects all parties." Ryan shook his head. No, Daniel didn't argue, because it did. Ethan finally leaned forward. "You wanted access," he said quietly. "You planned for it. This is the part where you walk away without consequences following you further." Lila stared at him. "You're giving us a way out?" Ethan held her gaze. "I'm giving you a choice." Ryan let out a sharp breath. "Or what?" Ethan didn't raise his voice. "Or this doesn't stay in this room." The meaning was clear. Documentation, intent, timing, everything they thought was hidden wasn't. Lila looked back down at the paper. Her mind was moving fast now, calculating. For the first time, she wasn't planning how to take something. She was deciding what she could still keep. Ryan leaned closer to her. "Don't sign anything," he said under his breath. "We don't even know what he's hiding yet." That word again. Hiding. Lila looked up at Ethan. "Longer this time. What are you not telling us?" she asked. Ethan didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, unlocked it, then placed it face down on the table. A deliberate move. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, but intentional. Daniel noticed, Ryan noticed, Lila definitely noticed, because something in that motion shifted the room again. Ethan leaned back. "You're not asking the right question," he said. Lila's voice dropped. "Then what should I be asking?" Ethan met her eyes, and for the first time he gave them something. Not everything, but enough. "You should be asking," he said slowly, "why none of this moves without me." Silence. Heavy. Complete. Because that answer didn't fit anything they thought they knew, and somewhere beyond that room, decisions were already waiting for his approval. The building didn't look impressive from the outside. Just another renovated industrial space on the edge of the city. Brick, steel, clean lines, no sign with Ethan's name on it. Inside it was different. Open floors, custom stations. Precision tools arranged with purpose, not for show. Quiet conversations between people who knew exactly what they were doing. No noise wasted, no movement without intention. Ethan stood near the far end, watching a new piece come together. Not rushed, not pressured, just done right, the way he always preferred. "Delivery schedule's been confirmed," a voice said behind him. He didn't turn immediately. "For all 3 locations?" "Yes." Ethan nodded once, then finally looked back. Marcus gave a small, respectful nod in return. No questions, no assumptions, just trust. That had taken time. Not given. Not borrowed. Built. Ethan walked across the floor, checking details as he moved. Small adjustments. Quiet approvals. The kind of control that didn't need to be announced. The kind people like Lila and Ryan never understood. They thought power was loud. They thought control meant being seen. They were wrong. By the time Ethan stepped into his office, the city was already shifting into evening. Light faded through the tall windows, stretching shadows across the desk. He set a folder down, didn't open it, didn't need to. Everything in it had already been decided. Ryan had signed. Not quickly, not easily, but he had signed. Because once the full scope of his dependency became clear, How many of his deals ran through channels he didn't even know existed? There wasn't another option that made sense. He walked away with what he could still keep. But the version of himself he tried to build, that was gone. Lila took longer, not because she didn't understand, because she didn't want to accept it. The realization hit her in pieces, the access she thought she had, the influence she believed she was gaining, the future she had already started planning, and none of it was real. It had all been built on something she never understood, on someone she never bothered to understand. She signed in the end, not out of respect, not even out of regret, out of necessity. Ethan didn't watch her do it. He didn't need that moment. There was nothing left to prove. The silence in his office felt different now. Not heavy, not tense, just clear. He sat down slowly, letting the quiet settle. For the first time in weeks, there was nothing waiting to collapse. No one trying to take something from him. No voices in the background planning their next move. Just space. And what he chose to do with it. He glanced toward the corner of the desk. The ring was still there. He hadn't thrown it away, hadn't hidden it either, just left it where it was. A reminder, not of her, but of the moment he almost gave something real to someone who only saw its value. He picked it up once, turned it slightly in his fingers, then set it back down. Not because it still meant something, because it didn't anymore. That was the point. A soft knock broke the silence. "Come in." Marcus stepped inside. "We're ready whenever you are." Ethan stood. Let's not keep them waiting. They walked back out together, through the same floor, past the same people. But something had shifted in how they looked at him. There was no confusion now. No quiet doubt about who he was or what he controlled. They knew. And still, he moved the same way. No performance, no need to prove it. That was the difference. At the far end of the room, a group waited near a long table. Partners. Decision-makers, people who understood scale, risk, timing. They turned when he approached, not out of curiosity, out of expectation. Ethan took his place at the head of the table. No announcement, no introduction, just presence. A file was placed in front of him. He opened it, reviewed the final page, then signed. One signature, clean, decisive. The deal moved forward, not because of noise, because of him. And for a brief moment, he thought about everything that had led here. The night under the bed, the voices above him, the way they laughed, the way they planned, thinking they understood his worth, thinking they could measure it. They were never close. Ethan closed the folder and looked up. Let's proceed. The room moved with him, just like it always had. He stepped away later, out into the cooling evening air. The city lights were starting to come alive, one by one. No one followed. No one needed to. This part was his. He took a slow breath, not holding on to anything, not chasing anything either, just steady. Some people spend their lives trying to prove their value to the wrong person. Others walk away, and finally build something that doesn't need to be proven at all. If you've ever had to choose between being understood and being respected, which one mattered more to you?